All right, we're at 12:02, almost 12:03. I think we will go ahead and get started. Thankfully, we're recording today, so if anybody pops on after the fact, they can always catch the beginning a little bit later. But yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the seminar titled Maximize Your One Person or Small Marketing Team. It's brought to you by MRPA and it's featuring Matt Roberts of Speak Creative. Before we get started, I'd like to cover some housekeeping information. Please keep your videos on if you're able to, and keep your microphones on mute unless Matt or someone else says otherwise. And additionally, if you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat at any point throughout the presentation. So now for a quick introduction to our speaker. Matt Roberts has served Speak Creative as the VP of Marketing and Sales for over 15 years. He's known as an expert relationship builder, helping organizations across the nation chart a path to reach their digital goals. Matt is based in Memphis and in his free time enjoys serving on the board of Mercy House, an organization that provides rent-free, short-term housing to give stability to residents while they get back on their feet. Matt is also a permanent panelist on the marketing podcast, A Little Off Topic. So let's offer a warm virtual MRPA welcome to Matt. And Matt, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I am in a slightly different setup than I normally am today. I'm actually in our Nashville office. I work out of our Memphis office. So if you see me kind of my eyesight kind of up in the upper left, it's because that's where all my information is and where my slides are. So apologies for that, but I'm excited to be with y'all and certainly appreciate the opportunity to catch up with y'all and hope that some of what I've learned over the past almost 16 years is helpful for you today. One of the things that I hear from folks kind of nearly every day is it can feel just marketing in general as part of a small team or maybe just even just as a one-person team can feel overwhelming and it's a lot to keep up with. And so that's really what we want to try to talk about today is just how to maximize the effort that you can give and the time that you can give to get some more movement. So if anything that I share with you today has you having questions, we'll have, I think, some time for Q&A at the end. But my email will be on the last slide, and feel free to reach out individually if that is something that you want to do. So enough with the preamble. I'll get us into kind of where we want to go next. And that is just briefly a little bit about Speak, and then we'll kind of move into the meat of what we want to talk about today. So just to give you some context for kind of who I am and where I'm coming from, Speak has been in business for over 20 years now. We were founded in 1999. We've realized a lot of success. When I started with the company, I think I was the 8th person on staff. And we're now a team of about 52. So we've seen some great year-over-year success. We're a value-driven organization. We work with folks kind of all over the company, and we've got a really great team behind us. Again, if you have any questions about us or who we are, would love to answer those in a separate conversation. But one of the things that we're kind of known for is we work with folks all across the country, across a broad spectrum of organizations. Specifically, maybe kind of connected to you guys is we work with a fair number of parks and other civic and cultural kind of destinations. And we're kind of in the trenches with these organizations. Some of them have 5 or 10 man person marketing teams. Some of them we're dealing with a person who wears many different hats, which probably is some of y'all as well. And so we'll kind of get into what I've learned with our experience with some of these partners. So I want to start us off with kind of some things to consider, some stats that might help kind of frame the start of this conversation. And some of this may feel familiar to you if you're living in this world. Well, the first one is this first statistic. So 91% of customers have visited a store because of an online experience. So each of us know that our online presence matters, but kind of how much does it matter is always kind of one of those questions in our mind. Well, this stat tells us something. And I know it's based on kind of store experience, but I think it's broadly representative of consumer behavior. And it really points to your online presence really mattering a lot. if it's representative of how users start their exploration, if 90% or more of your audiences start online, what are they getting from your experience? What are they getting from the experience of your brand or your department online? Would that be a positive impression? Would it be helpful and engaging? Are you answering key questions? Are you moving them to action? Are you helping them feel connected to what you're doing? So that's just some food for thought as we look at this first statistic. Number next, 47% of small organizations run marketing activities through a person who holds multiple roles. So this specific report was across a broad spectrum of organizations. So it was everything from small businesses to nonprofits to lots of other kind of types of organizations. So it's pretty universal that a lot of folks are handling marketing by themselves. So nearly half of you, I'm left to imagine, are handling marketing either by yourself or with a very small team, while you're also juggling running other parts of your organization, or at least facilitating or helping. So that's valuable, of course, to know. And this one is really kind of the one that I think paints a picture of reality, which is 50% of small organizations spend less than 2 hours per week specifically on marketing efforts or dedicated to marketing efforts. So based on this data, if you're in a position where you're wearing multiple hats, you've got multiple roles, you're not currently able to dedicate much of your time to pure marketing effectiveness activities. And this just elevates the importance of the time that you are able to spend on marketing. We can't allocate more time. We can't create more time. So we have to make more of the time that we have. So it just becomes really important to focus on impact and efficiency. And that kind of sets up the whole trajectory of where we want to go with kind of the rest of this conversation. So let's talk briefly about marketing in 2021. It can feel like there's not enough coffee in the world that allows you to keep up with kind of the ever-changing marketing landscape. But I'll try to simplify it for you and take inventory of kind of marketing channels where we can reach our audience and be effective in the time that we have available to us. So just to kind of lay kind of some groundwork, we're not trying to take inventory, and this is certainly not comprehensive list of everywhere you could be spending time in marketing. It's not even close to exhaustive, but this list kind of may start to help us narrow our focus, especially for folks who have limited time and resources. So let's kind of briefly kind of talk through these key elements of marketing. There's online performance, there's kind of traditional marketing, there's social media, there's lead generation. And lead generation is kind of a catch-all. I kind of cheated because there's lots of things that generate leads and all these other buckets, but I just wanted to have another place to put some of these things that don't necessarily fit specifically into online performance, social media, or traditional. But when we think about online, it's everything from your website to Google My Business to search visibility, analytics. It's the ability to, when we move to traditional, it's kind of all the things we already think about: branding, collateral, signage, TV, outdoor. Most smaller organizations and departments that we work with aren't doing just a ton in the traditional area because it's digital is so nimble and agile. It's just a much more kind of effective use of your dollar to the extent that you're doing some spending. And then social media, of course, is where we can apply time and effort. And so we're going to spend a fair bit of time talking about social media later. And then lead generation, we'll get into some automated pieces that can help kind of move people through a cycle of engagement with us. They don't take much time once we get them set up and running, and they can do some work for us while we pay attention to other things. So where should we start with all of this? The first piece is really looking at a really basic idea, and that's identifying our message. For those of you who spend a lot of time thinking about marketing, this can feel like a kind of a no-brainer. but I don't want to assume anything, and I want to bring us back to basics because there are some really, really good pieces of information here. So when you have a solid brand message, you can rinse and repeat your message over and over across many of your platforms. So messaging is going to be the foundation of any marketing channel that you use. So if you can identify your message, create a good comprehensive strategy, it makes the legwork of activity over time much, much easier. So we'll start with some things to think about when we think about messaging. So messaging will make your life easier, not harder. Spending time on the front end, and a lot of this is true. So when I talk about kind of some of the tactics that we'll talk about throughout this presentation, almost all of them have a kind of a runway of setup that's going to maybe take some time to get through. But once you get through that setup, the actual activity part, the things that, where you're engaging with your public, where you're really get your kind of wheel turning, it's just small increments of time that helps keep the wheel turning over. So one thing to remember is that what we call the red thread theory. And it's not our thing. It's many people know what the red thread theory is, but it's essentially looking at all the audiences that you need to speak to and finding what are the things that each of them have in common. And that's different for everybody. But if you can identify that red thread, you can start to build some messaging that is universally useful for each of your audiences. And to the extent that you need to customize that messaging on a per audience basis, you're making small tweaks. You're not having to completely start from scratch with a whole new audience. If you've got that red thread kind of theory in your messaging, you've got a central pillar to build off of, and that's really useful. The other thing with messaging, as we think about kind of the ideas here, is that consistency is key. So I'll come back to kind of what we see here. So we've got the ability to identify core audiences. We've got the ability to identify channels. So when we find out who we're talking to, we've got the ability to then say, where are they online specifically? Are they on Facebook? When you have a persona developed, or where can we find these people? Are they on Instagram? Are they consistently searching for certain types of things on the internet that we could be a part of? So identify what those channels are. Keep the red thread in mind, and then make it simple for yourself. We were talking about this a minute ago. Keep your messaging consistent. So from one audience to the next, you've got the ability to really reinforce common values and just be consistent, dedicated. And we'll talk about cadence with social media here in a little bit. And then just reevaluate on a planned kind of regular basis. So evaluate annually, at least, look at your messaging strategy. If it's a Google Doc, if it's a Microsoft Word, whatever, what are the things that we want to say? How are we engaging with the public? What are the values that we're putting out through our messaging? Like that needs to be a thing you circle back to at least once a year, if not more consistently. So like I said, that's kind of a ground rule. We got to have good messaging in place. To the extent you already have that, great. If you don't, that's the place to start. The next piece is working through creating a strategy. So your message is likely something that feels like second nature, but your strategy may not be. So you probably are in a place where you feel like you've got a strategy. I talk with folks from time to time who, kind of think, oh, I don't even know what a strategy is, and that's totally fine. So we're going to start with kind of the idea of introducing a marketing funnel to kind of help us narrow our focus as we look at how to make your time effective and impactful. So hopefully you've seen this before, but this is kind of the traditional marketing funnel. One thing that I think is really useful to keep in mind is when I'm talking with lots of folks, what they want to do is take somebody from the very top of the funnel who's never heard of their organization or their department or their business and take them, I want them to become aware of us and want to engage with us at the highest level, kind of from 0 to 100, all in one experience. And that's just, when we look at the marketing funnel, it's not practical. It's much easier to break it, engagement down into bite-sized pieces. And so we're going to kind of step somebody all the way from when they first become aware of you and your department to, what are the things we want them to be thinking about and considering, to, okay, what does a conversion look like? What are the calls to action that we actually have? What are the engagement kind of pieces that we can call them to? And then from there, we, in the typical kind of business world, we would say, okay, then they become a customer once they convert. And so I may use some customer language, and you guys will know what I mean there. But how do we create loyalty with that user? How do we keep them more engaged with our department over time? How do we get them online to be an advocate for what we're doing and the things that we're standing for and the missions that we have, and the way that we want to engage the communities around us? So that there's no way to move somebody in first time experience all the way from 0 to all the way down to advocacy all in one bit. So we're going to step them through a process. And there's a nice quote here: "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." I think we all get that. So what should we focus on to move folks through the funnel? And the idea is we just need stepped activity that is appropriate for each phase of the funnel. We're going to put that together kind of in a comprehensive way towards the end of this conversation. But what it looks like really is essentially a user journey where we would say, okay, yeah, all we have to do is start with creating awareness for our brand. So I need to focus, if you're a brand new department or you have very little kind of awareness in your community, that's the easy place to start. All we're focused on is awareness right now. So I need to get people just into the funnel. And that just means I need to focus on what are my awareness activities. I can work on, for the next 6 months, I can work on just awareness-based activities, and I'll outline some of those for you later. You might say, hey, we've got plenty of folks who know us, but they have no idea kind of what we're about. We move into the consideration phase. So for the next 3 months or 6 months, you're going to focus just on consideration. Don't feel like you've got to have a tactic in play for every single part of the funnel starting, next week, to the extent you don't already. We want to step through kind of, because the funnel essentially builds on itself, we'll start at the top and just work our way down to conversion, loyalty, advocacy. And then once we're there, we can sustain different pieces of activity with very little kind of ongoing incremental effort. So the next place to go is, how do we actually maximize the time that we have? God bless Chip Gaines. He's always good for a GIF. So we've nailed down our messaging. We've begun to think about our strategy. So let's highlight some tools before we get too far into really a deep dive on strategy and tactics, to look at some tools first that will help you save some time as we look to kind of pull these pieces together. And those fall into some different buckets that I've outlined here. And I think the title here is really, really valuable. Tools that do work for us equals time saved. We all, I think I speak for every person who's ever done any amount of marketing, when I say that, like, it's really easy to say, oh, I could knock that out. Or, I just came up with a really great way to engage people on social, and I'm going to write myself a reminder. I'm going to get it going. I'm going to write out all the content, and I'm just going to do it myself. And then, time goes by and it falls apart because lack of execution, lack of consistency. Tools help us stay consistent, and they help us save time. So we're going to look at different tools for social scheduling, email marketing, CRMs, and then amplification. It's not really a tool, but I'm kind of shoehorning it into the last piece of this. So let's jump into social scheduling. So social scheduling is If you're not using it already, it's magic. It's great. It's short-term work for long-term gain. And the thing that we want to maybe point out here is that when we talk about social, 9 times out of 10, off the cuff kind of thoughts or comments on social are not particularly strategic. You might look at like a social plan and say, hey, you know what? We know that we're going to want something that is timely because we know we have a big event coming up on this particular day. And you may not be able to craft the content until that day comes because you know that you're going to want to get a picture or a video or a comment from somebody in the moment. But knowing that you're going to do that and planning for it is different than just depending on your ability to sustain social activity with off-the-cuff commentary. And the biggest thing with social is consistency is key. So I've got some key points here for you. At Speak, we use Sprout Social as our kind of social scheduling platform of choice. There's a bunch of other tools that will help you do this. This is just what you see here. It's kind of the Sprout Social interface. We often can kind of hear that scheduling takes too long. But I promise you, it will save you time in the long run. Creating a workflow really allows you to kind of get into your planning for a few weeks, a couple of months, and move on to other things. And just a reminder, and we'll get into this in a minute more when we talk about amplification, but posting for the sake of posting decreases engagement. It's really important that as you're planning your social schedule, and you're automating it through something like Sprout Social or another tool, that you're consistent and that you're strategic in the looking back at your messaging that we talked about in the first kind of section, that you're leveraging the messaging that you've already got so that folks are getting a consistent brand message from you. I get questions all the time about how often to post on different platforms. There's no real magic to it. There are certainly recommendations that I think our digital marketing team would have. Generally, for something like Facebook, Instagram, we're looking at 3 to 4 times a week is really great. Any more than that, and you start getting docked a little bit with how much of your audience sees what you're posting. LinkedIn is one of those, kind of once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, kind of community engagement type posts can go a really long way for you. But there's no real prescription. Just if you're thinking through what would be a strategic post in social media, you're going to kind of naturally do some of that self-selection where you're like, you know what, we don't have to be posting every day. We're just looking to make strategic commentary on our social media. The next, sorry, I lost my clicker there for a second. The next slide is email marketing. And I catch a lot of flack sometimes for first bringing up email marketing because I think we're all used to what bad email marketing looks like. And that's the easiest thing to kind of for our minds to first go to. But it is a tremendous, quick, and effective way to get in front of basically all of your audience. I mean, each of us carries around a phone. We check our mail more often probably in any given day than we should. We're at the very least seeing an organization name and a subject line for any email that we get. And so, especially when we look at social platforms, only showing your content to about 10% of your audience at any given time. This is a great way to make sure that your message gets in front of everybody that you've got contacts for. So email marketing can be really powerful. And it also can be automated in the same way that social media can be automated. So the key really with email is to provide value. So when you think about your audience, there's always a what's in it for me. So when they're considering joining, even signing up for an email list or wanting for you to be in touch with them, think about kind of value that you can attach to why somebody would want to get that kind of content. And then once the email goes out, think about, what value am I trying to communicate in the email that I'm writing? So we're not looking to obviously fill up somebody's inbox. The other piece that we can look at is automation. So this is really where saving time for you can really come in. So when you are thinking about the marketing funnel and trying to move somebody through the different stages of engagement, if they become aware of you and you got value attached to why someone would want to, give you their email address to stay up to date with kind of what your department's up to, you can then begin thinking about what an email cadence would look like to move somebody through the different parts of the funnel. One of those things is just consistent value-based email. So once a month, once every couple of weeks, providing just good quality content. But then you can also think about it in more of a strategic way, where you would say, okay, if somebody is not yet engaged with us as a department, and we want to move them into a particular kind of type of activity with us, what kind of content would we want them to see? And then you can set up an email funnel that says, okay, if they open that email, what would the next thing that I want them to see? And you can say, do this next step. If they don't open the email, then do this. And so that's where you see on the screen. I don't know if I can actually, you guys will maybe see my mouse. You'll see that we've got kind of these branching decision trees, and you can build essentially a sequence of emails that can be spaced out over several weeks or over several months that automatically come to these folks just based on whether they open the email, whether they click the link or don't click the link. And if they do click the link, send them this. And if they don't click the link, send them this. And so just mapping out some of these conversation points that you want to have with your audiences can take some time. But once these automations are up and rolling, you never have to think about email when we're specifically thinking about how to move somebody through the funnel, except to just check in every once in a while and make sure that it's still the things that you want to say. Our next piece is CRM integration. And as a department, I imagine you have lots of different data points. And so you may be able to have some kind of CRM type of interaction already in the different tool sets that you have. But it may be worth looking at even just and I need to come back to email in a minute because I have some system recommendations for y'all. But it may be even worth looking at if you don't have the tools that you want out of kind of the systems that you have. There are some really great CRM options that are out there. Some of them are even free, like HubSpot is a really great free platform for CRM. And basically what that does is it just centralizes marketing contact information, and it lets you slice data to say, okay, I will only want to talk to folks in this particular zip code, or folks who are from maybe a certain area of town, because we're trying to kind of really get into kind of maybe how we want to engage in particular parts of your department and how they operate. It just lets you slice at different pieces of your audience without feeling like you've got to say, hey, send this message to everybody ever that I've ever engaged with. It lets you just be much more agile in the messages that you create. And if you're not able to do that with the data systems that you already have, having a CRM, even just a free one like HubSpot, getting an export out of your system, dumping it into HubSpot so that you can kind of get at that data in a more strategic way, can really just help you be much more effective and just a much better use of your time. So I mentioned HubSpot. I do want to go back to email here briefly because I've got a note on my notes here. Let me see some other tools. So we use a system called ActiveCampaign for our email marketing. There's MailChimp, there's MyEmma, there's of course the tools like Constant Contact. Almost all of them have some level of automation, depending on how sophisticated you want to get in there. You might see kind of more or fewer tools, but really from an email platform standpoint, those are ones we really look at and think highly of and would recommend. All right, so I mentioned CRMs and some of the systems that we use there. And now getting back to the idea of kind of using tools, your audience can also be a tool. And I mentioned I kind of shoehorned this, but we want to really look for amplification. So you want to actively recruit your audiences and even just members of your own marketing team or even just members of your department to share and like content that you're putting out on social. I mentioned the 10% rule earlier. Generally, like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, it's pretty universal these days. If you are sharing anything online through social media, only about 10% of your audience is going to get that particular message. So having folks like it and comment on it amplifies who sees that content. And you'll actually see that here in this chart next to that I've got here, where we've got different types of content. You'll see that we, in this particular kind of screenshot, where we've got an example of different types of content, images, links, videos being shared. And what you see over here on the right is engagement. So if I see that 82 people liked this content and 5 people commented on it, you see that it reached people in their feed 731. This is all from Facebook. So this reached 731 people in their feed. By contrast, I put out some content that 520 people ended up liking, 170 people ended up either sharing or resharing or commenting on, and that reached 8,500 people. So when we think about different ways that we can kind of start to at least give ourselves a little bit of rocket fuel to kind of amplify our messages online, even just like I said, kind of at the very beginning, actively recruiting your audiences to share and like and comment can really do a lot of good for you because you can expand your reach very, very quickly. And just earned media generally reaches new audiences. So thinking about content, not just to serve the people that you're already kind of in relationship, for lack of a better word, with earned media through press releases, through partnerships with other parts of your city or county departments, all kinds of different partnerships that can shape up, even like local small businesses or local nonprofit partnerships can just bring your awareness to your organization, especially through social media, can really give you a lot of lift with engagement. So be thinking about that. And I think I've got one more example to show. Yeah, so it's just kind of more of the same. So you'll see we've got another kind of overlay here, but I think the point is made. So again, kind of tools equal time saved. We want you to be able to save some time. The last bit before we kind of round things out is just knowing when to ask for help. So you can absolutely have kind of too many plates spinning and everything feels like it's on fire. Of course, it doesn't look like this, but there's obviously a time and a place to ask for help. So, just looking at, are you thinking to yourself, doing a self-evaluation? Am I maxed out on time? Have I reached in any given topic a limit to my knowledge or expertise? Just kind of do you feel stuck? This is where we kind of have a kind of point here of wanting to rethink ROI, and I'll come to that in a minute. But just anytime you feel like you're at a limit, it can just be an invitation to bring, whether it's somebody like us or somebody in another department who has experience in a particular area where you feel like you're lacking expertise, or it could be an invitation to go and take a certification course through Facebook or through HubSpot. Just ask yourself, if I knew one more thing, or if I had somebody who could help me with one more thing, what would we be able to accomplish? And just make a list of those things. It is really hard for me as somebody who leads a marketing team to come to grips with the fact that I am not capable of executing a social media campaign at the same level that our social media expert is able to execute. She spends all day doing just that. There is no reason that I should have any expectation that I know how to execute on her level. But if you find yourself being somebody who's a social media expert, you might feel like, oh gosh, I can't do email marketing, or I would need some help getting email marketing just set up and running. And once it was running, I feel confident that I could do that. Just jot those things down and seek out folks who can speak into your ability to help you get that kind of next piece of movement. Because once you do that, you're kind of just always improving and incrementally being able to add to your toolkit. And those are things that when we look way back at kind of the stats that we started with, of only having the average of 50% of folks only spend roughly 2 hours of purposeful marketing activity, or 2 hours of their time on purposeful marketing activity. That helps you kind of segment, okay, where are my next 2 hours most valuable? That can really kind of help set some expectations for yourself, and it helps depressurize and say, hey, if I've only got 2 hours, what's the next thing that I can focus on that will help us move the ball down the field, pardon the football cliche, just a little bit. And then I'll get back to this rethinking your ROI. When you think about the value that you can add by having somebody helping you get started or doing something just a little bit better that you don't have the capability to do right now, it takes something that feels like a spend or a cost, a sunk cost, into an investment where what you're saying is, because I've identified, because I know that I could do more. I'm just going to use with email marketing automation. I know that I could do a lot more with that if somebody would just help me get started. Then you start to think of it in terms of an investment rather than just an expense. And that's really where folks can kind of turn the corner and say, okay, if I make this investment, then I would expect to see a return. And that's really where things like costs can be justified. And a cost is not just money. Of course, that is one way that we can look at cost. But it's, where do I spend my time? Where do I look for help? It's kind of those different types of things to help you kind of reframe what a cost is. So now I'm going to kind of try to bring this home with coming back to the funnel. So we kind of had a little bit of a scatter shot of lots of different kind of angles to look at this, and tools that you can use, help that you can ask for. Messaging really matters. It all comes back to this funnel and the strategy. And when we look at the funnel and the strategy, what we want to start to do is layer tactics on top of it. And so this is where, when I was saying a minute ago, if you can focus on one particular segment of your funnel where you feel like, if I made an improvement here in this section of the funnel, it would make a really big difference for us. Again, it helps focus your time. It makes limited time, limited resources focused and valuable. And so what would, some examples of some things be in the awareness category? So if you were to find yourself thinking, we're a brand new department, or nobody knows about our department, so that's the place where we're going to start. What are some awareness activities that you could start working on, today? One, of course, is ads. Ads are always a way to get awareness quickly. It's not always a great or an easy thing for you to start because it costs something. But ads, especially pay-per-click ads through Google search, can really boost awareness very quickly, and also through social media. So that could be a thing that you could start. A really, really easy place to start is with Google My Business. if you haven't already claimed and updated your Google My Business listing for the different properties that are represented in your department, that is an easy place to start, and will help you get awareness, just because the information will be authoritative. Google will display your local results more often. Just make sure that those things are claimed and updated, and that's a thing that you can do today or tomorrow, and start making progress on. Starting to think about search visibility. So what are the things that folks are searching for related to your departments? And then develop content. So hopefully you have a website that you have the ability to start to craft some of that content around. Like, hey, if somebody wanted to find out about a particular question for my department and how I engage with the community, or how they can engage with us, whether that's like, can they rent a space? Can they, do we have wheelchair accessibility? Do we have facilities on premises? It could be anything. Is that kind of content represented somewhere, hopefully online, in a way that Google could crawl it, and you would now be available via search? Think about the calls that you get, or people in your department get from the public about like questions that they have. Use that as a framework to start kind of creating content that ends up living online, that gives you this kind of search visibility. Improve your social presences. This is kind of an easy word to throw, but like that would mean different things, of course, for everybody. But look at your Facebook profile, look at your Twitter profile, look at your LinkedIn profile, look at Instagram. What are the things that you're saying? Have you even looked at your bio lately? Are the links correct? Are you getting people to the right places? Like, even just taking an inventory of those things and feeling confident that, like, yep, I've looked at it, everything looks fine. That's comforting. But then you may look at it and say, actually, now that I think about messaging and kind of this red thread thing, if I start kind of a messaging trend, even just in my bio, then that's something that can carry into my social posts, and also into my email, and also into my web content, and those types of things. Then we get into consideration. Remarketing or retargeting, again, is another type of ad. And that can be email-based, that can be landing page-based, that can be a way to get in front of an audience who's already engaged with you. They're already aware of you. Maybe they land on your website on a particular page, and you say, hey, for somebody who's maybe on this particular page, I'm just going to use an example. Somebody's wondering if they can use one of your spaces for a wedding venue. Like, that would be revenue that your department could realize if they bounce off to whatever websites, and we're used to seeing ads on the side panel or whatever for the product that we just saw. Say, hey, do you have questions about wedding rentals? Or here's a direct link to get to that type of content again. That can really make a big difference. Responding to reviews. So we talked about Google My Business up above, but then you're always going to get comments and reviews for each of your properties. Responding to those in a positive way that reinforces your messaging can be really great, even if it's and of course it could be something other than Google My Business. It could be on Facebook. It could be anywhere where people can provide commentary on kind of who you are and their experience with you, whether positive or negative. But just having the discipline to set aside maybe an hour a week to go and just look at reviews and respond in a kind and brand focused way does a ton of good. Because even if somebody has a one star experience on Google, it makes a tremendous difference for me as somebody who's never experienced a brand or an organization or a government entity before, to be able to see them come in and say, hey, I'm so sorry that you had a bad experience. We'd love to talk with you more about what happened, provide a phone number, a way that they can talk to somebody, and we'd love to use this as a learning experience. Even if their comment is completely invalid or irrational, or somebody just is having a bad day, which happens, we can't control those things. We can absolutely control our responses. And for anybody who might engage with you in the future, like that's just really valuable to be able to say, hey, they care about the community around them, the community that they serve. That's a thing that you could start doing, and it doesn't take a bunch of time. You can create email incentives and drip campaigns. We've talked through that with kind of marketing or email marketing automation. This is kind of business-y focused, but we can create email offers, and probably you're bound a little bit by rules of what you can and can't offer. I imagine that this is probably not something that you get into too much. But when we talk about conversion and actually trying to get somebody to move through to a point of engagement, I'll go back to my wedding rental. Even just an email that doesn't have an offer, but just says, hey, we were glad that we were able to provide the information that you asked for. If we can do anything to help, make this happen for you, let us know. Rather than just sending, having that be a follow-up email that goes out a week after you send whatever kind of informational email that you got to get to somebody who asks for information. Just even something like that can help somebody feel, one, seen and engaged with, and two, you're more likely to actually realize revenue off of that type of engagement. Loyalty, we can create loyalty lots of different ways. That might be, in the spaces that I'm going to keep coming back to rental opportunities, but in the spaces that you have available for rental, having, information about other venues or other ways that folks can engage with your department. That can be really valuable. You can send somebody a satisfaction survey and invite them to, well, let me start there. So again, in our rental scenario, let's just say that we send them just a standard, hey, we, as a departmental policy, we love getting feedback and improving. Here's a survey of your experience with us. And you may have some questions that you have to ask. And then of course we want to ask the question of essentially, would you do business, or would you basically do this with us again, or would you recommend this to somebody else that you know? And that's a net quality score type of question. And if somebody says, if it's like a 0 to 10, if somebody gives like a 9 or a 10 on those questions, we might have an automation that says, okay, if they answered 9 or 10 on this survey to our net quality score question, send them an invitation to write us a review on Google My Business. Like that's an easy little thing to set up. You'll spend, an hour or two getting that set up, but then that does work for you for months and years if that's set up and running well. Handwritten notes. To the extent that you can write a letter to somebody and say, hey, we hope you had a great experience with our department. If there's anything we can ever do to serve you in the future, and have that be like personally signed. Even if the note's just typed out and all you do is just, have a handwritten signature and a handwritten like little PS, like, was great to have you guys, whatever that looks like. That can mean the world to somebody. And it's just another little touch point that takes somebody from kind of viewing you as a service to a part of their community. And that really makes a big difference. And then again, referral offers, I know are not probably a thing that is super in context for you guys. But inviting people to share, inviting people to who engage with you on social media, who very clearly love what you do or had a great experience, inviting them to tell their friends, to help folks know how you serve the community around them, turning those folks into advocates for you can really be valuable. And again, it increases and amplifies your message. It also just makes your day-to-day of trying to get your message out much easier as you think through those things. So that's the end result. That's the kind of idea of how we take a section of the funnel that we find ourselves in needing to focus on. And again, you would start at the top and say, do we have good awareness? Okay, great. Do we have folks who know about us but don't know much about us? They need to know more about us. They need to know more about how we serve our community or the ways that they can engage with us. Okay, cool. Let's get them into here are some things that we can focus on the consideration phase. And you just work yourself down. Spend the next 2 or 3 months on one part of the funnel or the next part of the funnel, putting tactics in place. And that'll make your time more valuable, more focused, and it will just make something like the entirety of the marketing funnel feel achievable because you're just going at it kind of one bite, one step at a time. So anyway, that's the end of kind of the content that I've got. I do want to thank you for letting me talk to you. Your willingness to jump on a Zoom meeting and have somebody walk you through this kind of content is commendable. I know we've all spent lots of time in front of Zoom these days, and it can be easy to have Zoom fatigue. So I'm grateful for your willingness to sit down and just listen, because I know that this is a lot of me kind of talking through different ideas. But if you do have any questions or want to chat beyond just kind of some Q&A that I think we'll open up here now, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is on there. My social handle is on there, so to speak, and our website, so feel free. And I do see that we've got some activity in the chat, so I'll open that up. Okay, cool. Just some comments there. Just want to make sure there weren't any questions. But that said, I guess I can generally just feel free to unmute yourself. If you have a question, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and we can go from there. And I'll stop sharing my screen because.
Hi, Matt.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, I've got a quick question, or if you could touch on YouTube.
Sure. Yeah.
We're trying to expand it a little bit and see if what kind of ideas you have. We're pretty slim pickings on the subscribers right now.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when I think about YouTube, it falls usually kind of in that consideration part of the funnel, right? So, when we think about, if the question kind of comes to creating more engagement on YouTube, then it's an awareness question. Folks aren't aware of the fact that we've got what I would assume you would say is good content on YouTube. So again, it goes back to, okay, well, how can we if we feel like YouTube is a valuable conversation point, we've got some really great content there, then how do we get more people to our YouTube channel? And so that's what I would look at, for the next, pick an amount of time, thinking through tactics for how you weave what you're doing on YouTube into your social activity, into ways that you're talking, looking at your website content. Does anything on your website actually even point to the fact that you got really valuable content on YouTube? Using email as a tool to create awareness. And then, of course, if you have some budget to spend on something like pay-per-click ads, either through Google or through social, that can be really valuable. YouTube specifically, if you got really great content on YouTube, creating snippets of that and pushing it up to Instagram, either through Reels or creating snippets of that and pushing it into Facebook or Twitter. Those would be different ways to just kind of help seed the idea that the content that you're providing there is really valuable and it's engaging. So that would be kind of an awareness if you feel like you've got lack of engagement. So the second question would be looking at your actual YouTube content itself and just evaluating, like, do we feel like this is as strategic and on message and engaging as we want it to be. Of course, that's kind of a different evaluation. But as far as just trying to get more people to it, again, it kind of takes us just back up to that top of funnel kind of awareness question, and what are some ways that we can schedule in consistent messaging towards what you guys are doing. I don't know if that helps you at all, but hopefully it does.
Yeah, sure, definitely. I guess one other thought I've had is reminding people at the end of a video, even if there's no talking in the video in some cases, but to say, or to put a graphic that says the standard like, subscribe, comment, ring the bell, check out our Facebook, comment, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, folks expect it, and it is a thing that we hear so often. And for any of us who spend any amount of time watching videos online, that it can feel a little bit like, of course they're going to say, like, subscribe, ring the bell, whatever. What I would maybe challenge you, especially if it's something that's not, it sounded like maybe there was a chance that maybe wasn't voiced over, but whether it was voiced over or not, or whether somebody was on screen or not, I think, even attaching it to how it helps you as an organization or as a department, always giving somebody a why. So why should I subscribe? Why should I follow? Always just feels really, it makes me think just a little bit more about, okay, well, maybe I will. So helping people understand, hey, when you like and subscribe, it helps us get, key messages out to you, and you'll see them in real time. And so we've got really valuable information, or it helps expand our audience because, you don't have to go into all this, but you could just say it helps expand our audience, because the more likes and subscribes that you have, the more likely somebody in your community is to see a video just on like the home screen of YouTube. So, because there's all kinds of different algorithms in play. So giving somebody a kind of missional based why for why they should like or subscribe it invites them into an opportunity to say yes, instead of just being a thing that they kind of hear all the time. But yes, like, one, absolutely you should do it. Two, if you can make it kind of missional attached or missional adjacent, that can be even more valuable.
Okay, thanks, appreciate that.
For sure. Anybody else? All right, Sean, I don't want to hold us up, but are you emceeing us out of here?
Yes, sir, I can do that.
All right, cool.
Right on. Well, thanks so much for a great seminar. I think this is something that really speaks to something that each and every one of our departments do. So thanks again to you, and thanks to everyone in the audience for attending. We're going to send out a session evaluation here shortly. We ask for everyone to fill that out. It helps give us feedback and know how we did and what we should look to do in the future. So once again, thanks again. Follow us on social media, or you can check us out at mrpanet.org to sign up for any of our upcoming trainings or PLCs. See you, everyone.
Thanks so much, y'all.